Welcome to Deep Waters, a podcast where we understand ourselves and others through our strengths, with your host, John Gibson.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of Deep Waters. My name is John Gibson. I am a certified Gallup strengths coach and a pastor, father, husband, blogger, all kinds of things. But starting this podcast because I am constantly learning, and the things that I learn, I always feel like I need to pass on to other people. And my journey with Clifton Strengths has been a journey over multiple decades. I was introduced to Clifton Strengths only a few years after it was introduced to the public. And it's been a big part of my life, even bigger in the last decade or so, as I've done training and gotten certified with it. It's a way that for me has been helpful to understand myself, to understand other people, to understand the things that I'm good at, to understand the things that I'm not good at. And in the midst of that, what I've really tried to do is acknowledging, hey, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not good at, here's what I bring to a situation, here's what I need in a situation. And in those situations where I realize there's a deficiency, where I need something from someone else, I will look, especially through strengths, to find ways that I can capitalize on the strengths that they have, especially those strengths that are foreign to me, strengths that lie in the bottom part of my skill set. Because when we work together, then it gives us that opportunity to be able to really um, it becomes almost synergistic when we collaborate together, when we put our strengths together. So this is an opportunity, this podcast, to share and invite others to have a conversation, so that they also might learn that in my learning and their learning, other people might learn as well, learning more about what each of us brings, each of us needs, as well as how we work well with others, what we need to ask for when it comes to certain situations that we know, hey, I might need a little extra here, or I may need something else here. How do we fill in the gaps that we present when we find deficiencies or areas where we just aren't strong? So just a little bit about myself in terms of strengths. I have a lot of influencing strengths. If any of you are familiar with strengths, then you know that they all fall into one of four domains: the executing domain, the influencing domain, the relationship building domain, and then the strategic thinking domain. 6 of the 8 strengths that fall into the influencing domain are in my top 10. And so I really lead with influencing strengths. I lead with, how do I expand the circle? How do I push it beyond myself and see how we can get additional resources as part of this? So I lead with my top 5, which are activator, communication, strategic, arranger, and ideation. And oftentimes I'll see that my strategic arranger will pair together in ways that allow me to be able to process information fairly quickly, but more than that, to be able to take sort of a balcony view of things, to rise above situations and see connections that other people might not see, to be able to make connections with things that don't seem to be related or even connectable, if that's a word. And so in some ways, I would call myself an evangelist of sorts, that I would try to get the message out beyond, in order to spread, in order to influence beyond just my circle. Probably part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast. And I've also found that in order to do that, in order to be a really good spokesperson for something, I need to have a why. I need to understand why something is the way that it is. I need to understand why it's important. I need to understand why other people should care about that. And so, in a lot of ways, that's what this podcast is. It's me saying, "Hey, here's the why," because I think it's really important to help people understand and embrace it, and say, "Oh, okay, now I get that," and so now I'm going to be an advocate for this. I'm going to be an evangelist for this in some ways. And so, probably what this podcast will be, at least to start, is me just inviting others to come and have a conversation specifically about their strengths, talk about what they've seen, how they've seen some of their, especially their top five, behave, how they may feel like one of those top five is sort of a what I'd call a core strength. And you think about a bicycle wheel and the core where all the spokes go to, the hub. And I think sometimes some of our strengths can act like that, can act like a hub that connects everything and out of which everything sort of flows and yet stays connected together. So, what I have found, given the strength set that I have, is that I'm a verbal processor. One of the ways that I really solidify that I've understood something and that I have been able to sort of inculcate ideas into my brain and my being is by processing outward. I always think about whiteboards, and that oftentimes I feel like people are whiteboards to me. They give me the opportunity to just write verbally and to hear responses. And then in hearing those responses, I will respond in kind and just begin to, again, process and really let that information get deep within me. And so I'm going to invite some of my friends to come and have conversations and to just talk through strengths, talk about what they've seen, talk about what needs they've seen in strengths, how that has been helpful to them, how in some ways it may be frustrating. I just had a conversation with a friend a couple weeks ago, and he's another church planter and pastor starting a brand new church in the last few years, and talked about some of the places where he gets stuck. And as we looked at his strengths, I said, "Oh, I that makes sense." And then I kind of laid that out. And so he's one of the ones that eventually I think will be on the podcast too, to have a conversation and say, "Hey, what does this look like, and how do we move through it?" Because oftentimes what I've seen in my own life and in the life of other people is that when we find an area where we're not really good, where we don't excel, where things don't naturally pour out of us, we just try harder. And trying harder isn't necessarily going to get us further on up the ladder. It actually can burn us out. It can frustrate us. It can frustrate other people as well. There are numerous times in my own life where I have felt like I've been called into something that I can do well, that I can excel at even. But the amount of energy that is exerted by me in order to do that is super, super difficult. It takes 2 or 3 times as much energy as it does than things that come naturally to me. And so I want to help other people with that, to say, "Hey, look, we're all going to have to do certain things that we don't always like to do, but as much as we possibly can, want to make sure that that's only like 20% of the time that we're stepping into those areas. And when we have to step into those areas more than 20% of the time, how can we look for other people who can support us in that, that we can delegate stuff to and say, "Hey, you know what? Administration isn't my gift, or ideating isn't my gift, or being focused isn't my gift. How can I leverage the help that I have from other people who may have those things and may have them more naturally. And so I would love to hear from you, would love to hear about the different things that you experience too. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, and I know you and I know your strengths, would love to hear from you as well. You can email me at deepwaterstrengths@gmail.com, and I will begin to compile a list of people who I'll have a conversation with. And hopefully this will be a beneficial thing for all of us who take part in this and who have conversations. Every single time that I do a strength seminar with people, I always tell them that it's incredibly valuable for me because I'm always learning. I have a spreadsheet that has over 250 people's top 5 strengths. I'm referring to that regularly. People who I work with regularly will laugh at me because I am constantly referring to that spreadsheet because it's so helpful for me to prepare conversations, to think, how does someone need to hear this? How do they look at the situation differently than I do? And really, how do we do it together? And really, what has really spawned this for me is the verse from the Bible that I get the name of this podcast. It's from Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5, and it says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." I'd like to think that I'm the one who has insight and that I can help draw some of these things out. But I also believe that each and every one of us is deep waters. We have deep waters within us, kind of like an iceberg, that we only see a portion of it on the surface. But when we spend the time really mining and digging and diving deeper, we can find out a lot more about ourselves. We can find a lot more about other people. And when we do that, when we make that investment, everyone's better off because we understand each other better. We understand not only who we are, but how we work and how we do certain things and why we do certain things. So I hope you'll join us when we drop new episodes. For now, I'm going to hopefully be dropping one at least once a month, and then we'll see where we go from here. I would love feedback, input, all kinds of things. Again, deepwaterstrengths@gmail.com is my email address. You can send emails to that and would love to just hear what's going on, what insights you might have for me as well. So join us for every episode. I expect that you will not be disappointed.